With all the talk surrounding the Chicago Bulls and potential trades and which players they can send out, all built around the Chicago Bulls maximizing their chance to keep their top 10 protected pick that's protected to the San Antonio Spurs. On today's episode, we're going to talk about, are the Bulls too good to keep their pick outright if they keep all their pieces? And should that even be the focus of the team? And then we're also going to look at 3 players that I think the Chicago Bulls should definitely keep if they do completely overhaul their roster. We're going to get into all that and more, plus the mailbag, right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so the question here to start off with, are the Chicago Bulls really too good to guarantee that they're going to keep their pick? And is that why the team is looking to move on from, are open to moving on to the majority of its roster? That's a question that you can look at it and attack in a lot of different ways. You guys know I really like to get in the weeds of analytics. I like to be numbers based, but also kind of factor in with what we're seeing with the eye test as well. When you look at it, the Bulls right now, via their winning percentage, are on pace to win 31 games this season. Now, that is not a great number by any stretch of the imagination. And even if you look at last year, because a lot of people like to talk about how weak the East is and things like that, which I really just look at as teams in the East are a lot more closer, so you get a lot more kind of, less variance of records in that case. But let's just put that in perspective, right? If the Chicago Bulls are on pace to win 31 games, but they have the point differential of a 25-28 win team, which that kind of evens out usually over time, even if we were to split the difference. Right, let's split the difference. So you're talking about a team that has the point differential of a 25-28 win team. They have the winning percentage of a 31 win team. So if you put it between 29 and 30 wins, that still just isn't enough to make the play-in. Right, when you look at it last year in the Eastern Conference, 36 wins is what it took to make for the last team to qualify for the play-in. Right, and that's well below the Western Conference where it was 46 wins. You had to be above 500, to just make the play-in in the Western Conference. But that also about 28 to 29 wins, that would have put you at the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference. And overall in the league, that would still put you at about the 8th worst record in the league. So that still all puts you in a place where you have the potential to keep your top 10 pick. Now, if the Bulls want to guarantee that, that's still a too close of a margin to maybe guarantee if you still want to make sure you keep your top 10 pick. So that's probably why you're hearing some things. But when you look at the product that the Bulls are playing on the court, this is a bad defensive team, absolutely bad defensively. And right now, while our offensive numbers and splits, the percentages look good on our three-point shots, the volume on our three-point shots look good, we still have no legitimate half-court offense. We're one of the worst half-court offensive teams in the league, which really points to, it just comes down to, is it a hot night or not for the Chicago Bulls? It's more than it being a hot night than it is really it being like the Bulls are some type of offensive juggernaut that really plans and game plans or whatever offensively. So when you look at those things, like the Bulls right now are in a place where, I tell you what, they could very well keep that top 10 pick outright without even making any changes to the roster. And that's if they don't experience any type of injuries, which we have at the beginning of the season. But overall, if you want to guarantee your chances to keep that pick, that's why you're looking at what the Bulls are at right now. You don't want to have too many wins to make sure you guarantee that. And so when you pair the fact that LaVine and Nikola Vucevic are playing some of their best basketball by process of elimination, if you eliminate both those guys, even one of those guys, it makes you off a much worse team when you're already on pace to win 31 games. And that's why the Bulls are really looking potentially at moving off of so much of their roster. And the answer to this question should be really what determines so much for the Chicago Bulls team. Because if this Bulls team does win too many games to where, let's just say, instead of being you ideally want to be around 7th or 8th to kind of guarantee that you're going to keep your top 10 pick. If you can be as bad as 6, it guarantees everything. But if you end up being 10th and one team leapfrogs you, you then have had a terrible season and you've missed out on your pick. Now, of course, some Bulls fans are like, well, why? We don't want to take the picks. We don't want to be bad. We don't want to be tanking. But I think that it's maximizing it. And the Bulls are a bad basketball team, right? And you got to look at it that depending on how much of their core they give up, right? If they're able to keep Coby, if they're able to keep Ayo, if Modest Bucilis, excels and grows, right, over time, and then this new top 10 pick that you get, they end up growing and hitting their stride and really developing well. You still got Julian, you still got Dalen, right? And you still got a core like you still got Jalen Smith here, right? You still got a Dama Sanogo in the weeds potentially, right? And so you still have enough to where in a Eastern Conference, I'm not saying that just because of the one player that you get top 10, all of a sudden you're competing for the play-in, but you can go from a team having 28 wins to a team that's competing for a play-in spot after 1 year. You can literally do that in this Eastern Conference. And if you're smart with who you sign, if you're smart with how you allocate your picks, and then in whatever you get back for some of these other guys, whether they're future assets or whatever else, the Bulls could be looking at going from a one season of 25 to 28 wins to the next 3 seasons being right back where they were, being a team that can hover around 39 wins, those type of things. So that it's a calculated risk. And I think for Bulls fans tend to have this look of, we're either going to be tanking bad for the next 5 years, or we just compete now and we just stay in the middle. There's a chance where you maximize this opportunity. And if you get the right talent, which is still a big if, right, with this front office, if you get the right guy in the draft and develop them well, you're really not looking at being too far from where we were last season. You're just realistically, you're not, right? And so that's the odds that the Bulls front office has to play. And that's where they have to look at in evaluating what they want to do at this trade deadline. Because, yeah, you can be right back where you were in a year or two, right? You could even maybe do it in a year if you're smart and lucky, right? And from year 1 to 2, Modest hits a great leap, right? So you can be right back, but then you're doing it with a younger team, right? Rather than having a core of basically over 30-year-olds, you're doing it with a core of 26 to 20-year-olds, right? And so that is a much different prospect when you're competing for the play-in with a young team versus you competing for a play-in spot for a team full of veterans that, while you can still add some to the roster, it's in a different place. So it's not as dire as what some people make it out to be. It's not all perfect and straight-lined either because, hey, AK and Eversley can still fuck this up, to just be quite frank with you. They're not outside the realm of possibility of doing that. So it just becomes about where they get lucky at, where they want to attack at, and we'll see where it leaves the Chicago Bulls for the long run. But a lot of questions that people are asking, that if the Bulls are open to moving the majority of their roster, who should stay around? Now, I don't like using the word untouchable, right? And mainly because I think in the right deal, anybody can get got. Now, the question is for example, I have Modest Bucilis on this list. Now, do I think that you could move Modest if you're getting a surefire superstar or star? Yeah, but the chances of the Bulls making that level of move are slim to none, right? So Modest Bucilis is, of course, first on this list. Again, I'm not necessarily using the term untouchable. I'm just using the term that they should stick around, right? So I think Modest Bucilis, for the obvious reasons. Young, 20 years old, 11th overall pick, has so much raw talent that he has that can still be untapped. Not to say that he's necessarily going to untap it all, but when you look at the mindset that he has, the level that he holds himself at, those type of things, he has the type of mentality of the guys that you see that usually do maximize on their potential. So because of that, Modest Bucilis is definitely somebody that should stick around for the Chicago Bulls team. And I would be so caught off guard if the Bulls do move Modest Bucilis, because if they do, what are you getting back? You better be getting something goddamn well amazing back in that, if that's the case. And so, yeah, I think Modest Bucilis is definitely somebody who's going to be around regardless of what the Bulls do with the next phase of their roster. And then the next 2 guys I have on, mainly because there's still a lot of untapped potential in these guys. That's Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips. Now, while Dalen Terry, I don't think is ever going to turn into some amazing offensive threat or anything like that, but when you look at him, he's turned into a really versatile defender and playmaker out in transition. He's 6'7". He's a guard/forward. He can play multiple positions for you. He can guard multiple positions. He's having the career high minutes right now in 13, with that said. And he's shooting at a 46.9%, so basically 47% from the field. I think we just got to build his confidence in taking more shots when that time as well. He only takes 3 field goal attempts per game. And again, his value isn't just offensively, but I think he's starting to scratch the surface at only 22 years old, that has the potential to be a guy that can be a ball handler, a multi-positional defender, and somebody that could really bring some of that dog mentality that you need a little bit. Now, if you're looking for huge offensive upside, probably not going to be there for Dalen Terry, but Jalen Terry still does have a lot of untapped potential there, as well as with Julian Phillips. Like, you look at Julian, he's getting the most minutes of his career right now. He just came back from injury as well. These are three guys that are all versatile. And if you look, what is the NBA going to? Players that can play multiple positions, and all three of these guys can play multiple positions. Now, I personally as well would like to see Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu stay as well. I think with those guys and their relatively cheap contracts right now, you don't have to move them at this trade deadline. But I am starting to realize the fact that that could be a possibility. And it's not necessarily one that I agree with, but I do think that it is one that could happen depending on what the offers are at the trade deadline. And so, I think also when you look at it, right? And, we got a voicemail. I'll get into it then. But I think, those players are ones that you definitely keep. Like, even role players like THT, he can be gotten. I get it. He's played great here. And this isn't to say that he hasn't played great. But again, he signed a 1-year deal for you. He's a free agent at the end of the season. He can be moved after that January date. So I'd say this, if between then and the trade deadline, if teams are interested in THT, and you have to fit him in and it's maybe add him into a Vooch package to get the pick unprotected rather than protected or whatever else it is, I'm open to moving that, right? And that's not to say to knock what THT has brought here as still a really young guy himself, but then you got to look and explore everything depending on what the offers you get back are. But those are really the guys that I'm really looking at on this Bulls roster, and I'm saying, like, personally, Coby, Ayo, but again, I can understand why those guys could be added to things because you want to strike where their value is potentially high. But then the Modest, the Dalen Terrys, these are guys that I think, hey, there's so much untapped here that we still should be holding on to these guys, especially if we're going a much younger roster, in my personal opinion. And we'll see what happens over that case. The Josh Giddey aspect of it, he's not going to be moved anyway. He can't be traded. So we'll see what happens with restricted free agency for Josh Giddey when it comes down to that. But yeah, I mean, overall, like I said, like, that's not to say that we don't have talent. I love Jalen Smith on this roster for sure. But you look at his cost-effective contract. If a team does want that, I'm not against necessarily giving that if it's the right deal. And it just comes down to everything. That's why I don't use the phrase untouchable, because anybody can be got. It just depends on what level of deal's there. Let me know who are some of your guys you would love to see stay around on this roster, regardless of what the Bulls do at the trade deadline. But it is Sunday, so that means it is Mailbag Day. Let's get into these voicemails. This one's from Brian Washington.
Hey, what up? This is Brian Washington again, man. I apologize for the shit outburst. I was just in my feelings about this damn team, but apologize for that, man. But I got one question. For a win now, if you were management for a win now team, what moves would you make? Because you know a lot about basketball and all the analytics, everything. That's why I watch the show. What moves would you make for a win now team and for a long-term team? If you go long-term, what wins, if you as far as rebuilding, what moves would you make for that? What moves would you make for rebuilding? And what moves would you make for a win now team? Right?
This is a great question, Brian. If the Bulls were in a win now mode, right? Let's say at the trade deadline, they're looking to make moves to strengthen this team's chances of winning a playoff series. I think you get more size and rim protection. You need that one. I would try to find another versatile wing defender as well. Another one that can go out there and float around and guard almost any position from guard to the three, right? Either guard position and the three. I think if you have another one of those guys that can be in a lot of different lineups, that even if they can hit an open three-pointer, will really help this team a lot. If you add another 3-and-D wing, a consistent 3-and-D wing to this team, and some more size and rim protection, I still don't think that this team wins a playoff series, but I do think that those are kind of realistic moves to make to win now that can definitely help this team's chances of winning. Long term, you also asked what to do if it was long term. Play the young guys more, better development, assets. That's what I'd be looking to acquire. And also, I'd be looking to get a better head coach in here that's better at player development. Those are the three things that I would do if we're changing this and gearing it more towards long term than in a win now scenario. That would be where I would kind of put my assets at and see where we come out on either side of that. But great question, Brian. Very great question there. Let's get into this next voicemail. This one's from Will.
How's it going, Haize? This is Will, LaGrange native. I'm in the car with my brother coming back from the game right now. Like you said in your post game, it was a fantastic game. We played them close, but it was tough in the end. Obviously, Peyton Pritchard went nuclear. Basically, my question I wanted to ask is, Matas came in. He was one of the first guys off the bench before anybody that came in, really, before Torrey Craig, any of them guys. And he came in, played solid, hit a shot, but then didn't play for the rest of the game. So obviously, like, we could chalk it up to Billy Donovan's incompetence, but I want to get your take on what you think about them having the confidence to bring Matas in early, but not the confidence to have him play the rest of the game.
We got to develop our boys, Haize. Young guys, Matas, got to develop them.
Got to develop the boys. Let me know what you think. Appreciate your grind.
Bringing in Modest early and not playing him much afterwards. I mean, listen, to me, there's no reason why Modest Vucevic at the minimum shouldn't be getting 10 to 12 minutes every game. I just think that should be the minimum for him. It's 10 to 12 minutes. That really allows a player to really kind of get in their groove. I think we've also seen that when Modest plays double-digit minutes, he usually makes impacts, whether it's blocking shots, whether it's getting out in transition, whether it's dunking, whether it's scoring, whatever it is. And I think that it's also because Modest is so much better right now in the open court than half court because we just don't have a good half court offense. I think you look at that and say, hey, you're not really getting that many open opportunities in 4, 6, 7 minutes, right? Like play him 10 to 12 minutes per game. I think that should be happening for Modest Vucevic. And, run a little bit more off-ball actions for him, which we need to do for more players on this team regardless. I'm not in the camp of start Modest Vucevic right now because I think defensively he just doesn't bring a lot. The Bulls are still trying to compete and win games, but I do think that there should be no excuse for 10 to 12 minutes being the minimum, right? You can even make a case that it should be 15 minutes at a minimum with this roster. But again, Billy Donovan is competing and trying to win now. That's why you see, like, as games get closer and tighter, unless Modest has already just been playing great, you see THT out there more, right? So it's those things, but I think Modest should absolutely be playing more. I don't think too many people really disagree with that. He's shown so many flashes, and those flashes can't become consistent if his minutes aren't consistent, right? If you're not playing him out there. So you got to play Modest Vucevic a little bit more. But this is a Billy Donovan coach team, and as always, Billy's going to frustrate us. It's just is how it is at being a Bulls fan, unfortunately. All right, let's get into this next voicemail. They didn't leave their name. This one's from the 312.
Morning, everybody. Morning, Haize. It's about 8 o'clock, so I'm going to see if I can get this one in. Real quick, I just want to mention, can a team going through lots of adversity in the early season, going from 0 to 20 deficit early on and overcoming this, can that benefit them in the long run and potentially playoffs?
Can early struggles benefit the Bulls later on? I mean, yeah, we've seen that happen. Anything's possible, right? Like we've seen a team that has gone through the way to word it always is that teams have to learn how to win, right? You have to learn how to win. And through that, it comes through failing. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen all in the same season. Sometimes you have seasons of needing to go through the trials to learn how to win at a high level. But then after you come out of that, you have some young players that are ready and that type of thing. So that could be the case for the team, is that they're just learning how to win right now. And that's going to be the case for a while for them. And yeah, it could play off for them. It help them in like a playing game and scenario and things like that. I think this team is just it's struggling. Like I think that the things that the Bulls have struggles at within the interior defense, a pick and roll defense, like these are things that we've seen them have already. So that's why I don't think they're things that can really change drastically. Like we had better players in Alex Caruso and Andre Drummond that were really good defensive players that we still had problems with pick and roll defense. We still have problems with 3 points allowed, which is another Bulls problem that we don't talk about as much because paint defense has become and allowing scoring in the paint has become so much more of a thing for this team. But I think a lot of the things is systematic. I think a lot of the things as well is just lack of skill. But I do think that mentally, yeah, those early struggles, they do help you at some point in time. It just may not be this season. But great voicemail there. Let's get into this next one. This one's from Mike.
Hey, Haize, it's Mike. So I want to ask, you've mentioned a lot, and I've heard other people, even in the Lakers space, say that there's a chance that Zach LaVine's contract is just not movable, even though he's playing so great. People might just not want to take his contract, or the best the Bulls could get for him might be like second-round picks, which may not be worth it. So I was wondering, what if the Bulls decided to keep LaVine, but they still wanted to ensure that they prioritize development, give people like Modest more playing time, and increase their chances of keeping their top 10 pick? In that scenario, do you think they might be what would you do if you were AK? Would you be looking to just trade anybody for the best assets you can get back? I mean, whether it's Io or Coby, in theory, moving on from anybody would clear up some space because then LaVine could move back to the 2. You could have Julian Phillips or Dalen Terry or Modest play a lot more. I just wanted to know your thoughts about that, just especially with regard to salary cap. I mean, I understand why it's good to move on from the biggest contract you have, but given that the Bulls struggle to attract free agents and how they might be looking to add talent through the draft, would it really be so bad to keep LaVine on the books, just make a few other moves and clear up some space, and just as opposed to trading LaVine for players that aren't going to help short term or long term and not get any assets back? Yeah, curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Can the Bulls keep LaVine while maximizing development and keeping the top 10 pick? Yeah, I think there's a world in which that happens. Like, I said it, at the beginning of the show, like we are on pace to win 31 games via our win percentage, and we have the point differential of a 25 to 28 win team. You can keep your top 10 pick with those numbers. There's a chance of that, but it comes down to what maximizes that, right? And so, yes, there's a world in which the Bulls keep LaVine, and we're still bad. And I tell you what, that may be if you're for the people that want to see this team not be bad for as long. I tell you what, if the Bulls get a top 10 pick in this draft without moving LaVine, maybe just moving Vooch, depending on where that player is, there's a huge opportunity for that, right? And so I think that's what it comes down to. And as far as the salary cap, the Bulls really aren't in a bad place salary cap wise. I've gone over it before. Like even after if they and he hasn't earned it, so it's doubtful that it's going to happen. But even if the Bulls gave Josh Giddey a $30 million contract extension, the Bulls would still be about $20 to $25 million below the first tax apron, which is still enough to add a free agent at the full mid-level exception, right? Because we haven't typically used the full mid-level exception because it would kick us into being over the luxury tax. They still would have the room to do that. You still would have the room to then also offer and use your biannual exception. So the Bulls aren't really in as bad of a salary cap spot as what people make it out to be. I just think that this front office doesn't want to pay what the salary is for the product that they're getting for a team that's just hovering around that play-in spot that may not even make the play-in. So I think that that's the thing that comes down. They don't want to pay for the production that they have. We actually aren't in that bad of a salary cap position as what we have been like this past offseason. It just depends on how they maneuver that money. Now, you could get in one. I think even if the Bulls extend Josh Giddey, extend Io, extend Coby White, you're still looking at next summer, not this upcoming summer, but the summer after that, after potential Io and Coby extensions, the Bulls could still potentially be sitting at $25, $30 million dollars in salary cap space. Space beneath the luxury tax. So they actually have a pretty good projection going forward on their money. It just comes down to how they want to utilize that, right? So that's the thing to look at. And do you want to pay that for whatever product you're getting on the court? That's what you have to look at. All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one's from Corn.
What's going on, King Drip, man? It's your brother Corn, man. Let's get right into it, big bro. Let's get right into this shit. I'm supposed to, I'm supposed to come in hot in this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? I ain't really been on, I kind of been, I guess not Corn in a way. But let's get this shit turned the fuck up, man. Let's get this shit down, man. I'm gonna just say this shit, man. And I'm gonna say this shit with my motherfucking chest. You know what I'm saying? Say it with my motherfucking chest. It is time. Not now, right the fuck now. I'm just gonna say it. And I know we're not gonna do it, but we should do it. We should trade Coby motherfucking White. Yes, I said it, and I'm gonna say it. And I know some people go be like, "Oh, Corn, he tripping, he high, he smoking again." Yes, I am high as giraffe ass right now, but I don't give two fucks about that. No, I don't give two fucks. It is time. It is time to trade fake agents. You know what? It is time to trade Coby White. All right. He's too inconsistent, man. To be real, what Haize said, there is a very lot of similarities already to a player that we have that we're going to trade anyway. Will we do it? I don't think so. Can we build as a piece, as a foundation piece? Yes. Do I find more value right now in trading him? Absolutely. And that's another question I have for you. If we do, or if we put him on a trading block, what is his value, and what team likely will be using his services? Or will we need a guy's services to push him to a championship, to push him to the top? Which team that you see that Coby will fit right in as a scorer, and they can blend in the inconsistencies, because someday that man will go off for 35, you know what I'm saying? And then some days he just go off for 8. And that's just Coby White. You gotta take the good with the bad when it comes with him. But right now his value to me is good. So it is time. It is time to trade Coby White. It is not sad to say. I'm not sad to say it. And yeah, it is what it is. Whoever disagrees with me, fuck it. It is what it is. Have a blessed day, brothers. You know I always love you, man. Appreciate you. Tell me what you thought. If you agree, disagree, you already know what it is. Blessings, King. RIC Red Nation.
Bulls should trade Coby White. Man, listen, I don't like hearing that, and but I understand that this is a business, and there is a possibility for that. Now, I do think that some things are blown out of proportion on Coby White's inconsistency. For example, this, right? Out of 21 games so far, Coby White has only been 8 games where Coby White has scored under 20 points. When you look at the same time frame last year, he at the first 21 games of the season, 14 games he scored under 20 points. So he's been a lot more consistent, but there are still some of those inconsistencies there, right? And so, yeah, trading Coby has its merits as far as maximizing on the value, which is something that this front office hasn't really done with a lot of their pieces that they've moved on from. So there is merit in that if they do want to maximize on the value of players, because here's the thing. You got to keep in mind, if the Bulls end up in like the top 10, but not in the top 4, they're drafting best position available. You know what there are a lot in this draft? Wing players. Hugo Gonzalez, a player that you put me on. There are a lot of wing players in this draft. And so what do you have to do to open up a spot on the wing? You got to open it up some way. You already got Manas Vucevic who can play the 3 and the 4. You still got Patrick Williams who, if you do play Manas at the 4, that's probably going to move him to the 3. You got Zach LaVine playing out of position at the 3 right now. And you still got Io there. You still got Josh Giddey, right? You still got a lot of players at that guard position. So if the Bulls do wind up keeping their top 10 pick, but if it's not in the top 4 right now, you still got Maloik. I'm still trying to pronounce his name right. The center from Duke, who could be there around the Bulls. But again, if the Bulls have a different best player available, and that's the process that they want to go at, there's a lot of wing players in this draft that are going to be drafted around that area, and they may have to make a tough decision there. So there is a chance of that. There is a chance of that. So you're not wrong there, Corn. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.